And welcome to the Pewtercast. This is episode 4, Getting Back to the Fundamentals. Folks, I am Brent Allen, your host. How's it going, Bucks fans? Glad to have everybody out there with me today. Hey, real quick, before we get into the show, I just want to give a quick thank you and a shout out to everyone who's been downloading and sharing the show, especially those of you that tuned in to our last 2 bonus content episodes that were released between episode 3 and this episode, episode 4, which we titled The ASJ Situation Part 1 and The ASJ Situations Part 2, because I got to tell you what, that blew up. Oh my gosh, guys, I can't even believe the numbers that were for that. It was so phenomenal to watch you guys just be downloading the show and to be responding and sending me notes and sending me emails. I can't even get into everything that has to do with that. I was so thankful for that, guys. I knew by the time we got to this episode that we would kind of be past the ASJ situation, which is why I stopped and I kind of made that the bonus content for that specific week, so we could respond, almost immediately to what was happening. And if you didn't get to listen, I really would encourage you to go back and take a listen to that. Part 1 was really kind of what do we do in the immediate aftermath of what Austin Seferian-Jenkins did, not just getting kicked out of practice, but really kind of the Twitter rampage he went on, where he really kind of went after some Bucks fans. And then part 2 was what would our response now be after he issued his apology? He went out on the field the next week. I think this happened on a Thursday, and by that Tuesday, he spoke to the media. He issued an apology, and I love seeing that a lot of Bucks fans are like, "Hey, awesome, forgiven. Let's move on." But there is actually still some lingering stuff that's left over that needs to be cleaned up, and I just really encourage you guys to go back and take a listen to that one and kind of catch the full Monty of what we were saying with how that works. So there's that. And hey, listen, another big thank you. If you have gone on to iTunes and subscribed to this show and then left us a review, guys, thanks so much. I've got a few reviews here that have come in this last week that I wanted to read out to you. Alex 1984 Gator says, "It's a great podcast and I cannot wait to listen to future episodes and go back and listen to previous episodes." Well, Alex, they're all up there on the feed. Please have at it, my man. And I hope you enjoy. I love having you on, and can't wait to hear your thoughts on some of the future podcasts. I'm going to completely wreck this name. Payless Boy, I guess, says, "The Pewtercast is awesome!" All caps. Love the Pewtercast. Love the podcast. Brent Allen is an excellent host, and the content is great. Looking forward to future Pewtercast, and go Bucks. Well, thank you, Payless Boy. Thanks so much. I really appreciate the compliments there. Love that. The Conch Banger, this one makes me laugh, says, "This is the best Bucks podcast out there. Finally, someone who doesn't annoy me like that obnoxious Polish fella and the crybaby from Bucks Brief. Everyone can enjoy the content from this Bucks podcast and from a competent host." Well, Conch Banger, hey, listen, I don't know where the love is for the other Bucks podcasters out there. I think we're all great. There's not enough of us. We need more Bucks podcasts. So I'm not saying anything negative about those guys, but I really appreciate the vote of confidence. I'm glad that I don't annoy you and that you don't find me a crybaby. So thanks so much for that. I really appreciate it. A little tip of the hat to you there. And one more, Pomolb, I guess, is how you say this one. It says, "The podcast is by a fan for a fans." Wow, there's somebody who's been listening since the beginning. I haven't said that line in a couple episodes. "There's a podcast by the fans for the fans. Finally, someone who brings good sense to the chaos that often comes with being a Bucks fan. Can I get an amen? His insights are often surprising, sometimes amusing, and always spot on." Well, thank you, Pomolb. I really appreciate that. And you're awesome too. So, well, guys, thanks so much. Hey, listen, if you go over to iTunes and leave us a review, hey, we're going to read them. We're going to read them here on air. And by the way, we've got a little kind of a little challenge that I issued to you guys if you were listening to the last episode, where I said if we get 25 iTunes reviews by the preseason, that's kind of the goal that I've set. And I think we can actually, I think we can do it. As many people that are listening to this show, 25 should be really easy. But if we get 25 iTunes reviews by the preseason, I'm going to add an extra show per week once the season gets here, kind of an instant take after each game, really just as soon as the game's over and as soon as I can get to my recording equipment and get it uploaded, I'll just record a short, hey, here's my initial thoughts right after the game, before we get into actually the major content where we're breaking down the game later in the week. So I really look forward to doing that, but the 25 iTunes reviews will be the thing that kind of kicks that into gear and makes that turn on. So I hope you guys all jump over on iTunes, even if you don't listen. Hey, other places you can find the Bucks, the Pewtercast here. You can find us on Jabbercast. We're on Podcast Addict. We're on, of course, iTunes. We're on Stitcher. So guys, there's plenty of places you can get a hold of us. You can always get us directly through the website. They're at pewtercast.libsyn.com. You can find us on Facebook. You can find us on Twitter. Both of those are the Pewtercast tags on that. So plenty of ways to get in contact with us, but the iTunes review specifically is what we're looking for to activate that particular show. So hey, one more quick little plug. I did mention the other podcast. I want to just shoot those out there because I am a fan of all things Bucks and all things podcast, and there's just not enough of us. There's only a handful of us. Hey, I was really glad to see that the Bucks Insider, Bucks Live Insiders was back. That's really just a radio show that they take the audio and throw up on the podcast. But the specific podcast, Off the Edge, has been putting out some great content. They're out weekly. And What the Buck is back. They're back for their 2016 season. They kicked it off. Be sure to listen to them. Mark Cook from Pewter Report has been joining Old School for the first couple episodes. So go on over there and give them a listen. Guys, I realized this week in listening to them, really what makes this show different. I've been thinking about this a lot. How do we stay current? How do we stay how do we stay this? Because the whole idea of this, and the Pomol mentioned it, this is a podcast by a fan for a fan. Something you guys should know is I'm not a radio guy. I'm not a Buccaneers insider. I'm not a blogger. I don't do this for a living. I don't make my living at reporting on anything with the Bucks. I played football in high school for a little bit, and I watched the team on TV, and that's really about the extent of my expertise. I'm a guy. I like watching football. So, and I realize, guys, in the middle of this, the other Bucks podcasts that are out there are great, and they're great at what they do. But I'm not here to report the news like a lot of those guys do. I'm here to just comment on it from a fan's perspective, not even from an insider perspective, but just from a fan's perspective, just to rally us. And I realize that's what I love about this particular podcast is we get to do that. And I'm really glad I was really glad to get to a spot where, I'm glad we waited to do this podcast. If you listen to episode 00, I talked about how I'd originally had this idea last year, and I kind of held off, and I'm glad I did, because if I'd done it last year, I probably it really would have just started sounding like a lot of the other guys. And instead, I think we actually have our own unique voice to that in the midst of all the different podcasts that are out there, although there's not a lot, so go listen to them all. That said, you guys should know that for this episode, we're trying a new format. A lot of times what happens is I'll spend a long time researching the stuff that I want to talk about, and because there's not a second person here for me to banter back and forth with, it's just me. And to prevent a lot of the ums and the uhs and the stuttering and the repeating myself, I actually wind up really scripting out the entire show, the entire episode. And I cannot even begin to express to you just how long that takes. So for today's episode, I thought I'd try a new way. Instead of scripting everything out, I've just got bullet points. And we're going to see how that goes for this show. If it doesn't work, I'll go back to the other way. But really, I'm just trying to figure out a way to see exactly that right there. That's why I typically write out the show. I'm just trying to figure out a way to make the process faster for me and still deliver the same great content. All right, so let's get into the show, guys. Let's get into today's episode. Back to the fundamentals. Guys, in our main segment today, we are going to be kind of switching our topic. The last several episodes, we've been focusing on the culture and the changing the culture. And in this one, we're going to get back to the fundamentals. We're getting back to football. We're getting back specifically to talking about what do we need to see from a football aspect this coming year from a particular set of players, and we'll talk more about that when we get into there. That should be a really fun discussion. And then in our top 5 segment today, we're going to be talking about the top 5 playmakers in Bucks history. So we'll have that going on. And then we're starting a new conversation segment. Normally we do our Buck in the News, but we're doing a new one today. We're going to try it out. It's called Fan to Fan. where I'm going to talk to you as a fan about stuff that's happening in Bucs world, and kind of not even the news articles, just some things that are out there, things that we're seeing. Just as a fan, just a fan talking to fans, what are some of the things that we're looking at? So, well, guys, I can't wait to get into all this. So what are we waiting for? Let's get the show started.
They don't know about us, they don't know about us. They don't know about us, they don't know about us. They don't know about us, they think we dumb, diddy dumb. But they gon' know about us. They gon' know about us. Hey, they gon' know about us. They gon' know about us. Oh, they gon' know about us. They gon' know about us. Oh, they gon' know about us. They gon' know about us. 622 plus, gon' add it up.
Welcome back to the Pewtercast, guys. Brent Allen here. This is episode 4, getting back to the fundamentals. You know, if you guys have been listening to the show for any amount of time, there's only a handful of episodes out there prior to this one, 3 to be exact, 4 if you count the 00. I don't really count that one. You may notice that we've been talking a lot about the culture at One Buck Place, the culture around the Tampa Bay Buccaneers organization, how we as fans should respond and react to that. And I thought in this particular episode, we'd kind of take a left turn off of that just a little bit and get back to talking about football. Like, let's talk about football. Let's talk about sacks and touchdowns and receptions and those kinds of things. But it's still connected to the culture aspect. Okay. I'm not changing the whole tone of the show, but here's the deal. When we talk about culture, what we're doing is we're really kind of zooming out and taking a bird's eye view of the entire team and seeing how everything fits together. You know, and that culture is kind of the glue or the mortar that holds everything together. And if we follow that analogy, the bricks, the pieces we're using to try to put together are going to be our players, you know? And part of what you have to do as part of the culture is you've got to remove the bricks that don't fit. You know, we had a big discussion over that for our bonus content, episode 2 and then 2.5 with Austin Seferian-Jenkins. Is he a brick that doesn't fit? Go listen to that and find out what we said about that. But guys, here's the thing. You can't build a culture of winning if you're not actually winning the games, which means your players have to execute their positions well. It means your bricks have to do their jobs. Okay, you can't just depend on the mortar. The mortar is going to hold it all together. The mortar is going to be the thing that makes it come together, because you know what happens if you have a wall that doesn't have any mortar in it? It just gets knocked over. You can have all the best bricks in the world, but if there's no culture holding it together, or if it's a bad culture, then it's just going to crumble. Right? So you need both. You need the bricks. You need the players that are doing their jobs and doing their jobs well. And you need the mortar, the culture to come in and glue it all together. And so, guys, that's really what we're going to be talking about. We've been talking about the culture, and now I want to go on and talk about those bricks. Okay? Does that make sense? Now, listen, guys, our team has a lot of talent on it. It really does. We've got a lot of really great skilled positions, skilled players in skilled positions. We've got some great people in backup spots. But, you know, guys, out of all of that, there are a handful of players, and there are only a handful of players on any team that really rise to the top as kind of the playmakers. You know, they're the stars of the team. They're the studs of the team. And we need our stars to be stars. We need our studs to really just go out and be not just be an embodiment of culture, but to actually execute their position and do it well. And when they're doing that, when the playmakers are doing that, it lifts everyone else on the team around them. It shows that we're really serious about winning games and being a force in the NFL, about being relevant. Okay. Now, listen, guys, sometimes when you're building a building, you can have bricks that are not always as pretty. You know, maybe they're not perfectly straight. Maybe they're missing a chip or two on one side. And, you know, the mortar, that culture can make up for that. That's part of why it's so important, as it seals in those gaps. But your key bricks, the cornerstones of your building, they've got to be solid. Those are the ones that you're putting out front. Those are the ones that you're setting in the corners. Those are your keystones. Those ones have to be good bricks. You don't want to use one that's got some chips in it. Okay. So guys, that's what we're talking about. And I've picked out 6 players from our team this year that are the guys that I consider the playmakers. And we're going to talk about those particular playmakers, and we're going to see what is it that we need from those guys this year. What are the things we have to see from them this year that maybe is a bit different? So because we're talking about something that's different than what we've seen from them before in the past, I'm not talking about any new people we've brought onto the team this year, whether it's a free agent, because certainly Brent Grimes is most likely going to be a playmaker for us. Robert Ayers probably will be a good playmaker for us, but I'm not talking about those guys. Vernon Hargraves in the draft, Noah Spence from the draft. Those guys I'm sure are going to be great players for us and really could turn into playmakers. But I'm really talking about the guys who this is at least their second year on the team. They're returning to the team. And we've got something that maybe that as good as they are, they didn't accomplish last year or in previous years. And this is the year for them to do it. Does that make sense? So that's what we're getting into in this main topic today. And the first guy that I'm going to talk about is the guy who I think we have to talk about him first, because this guy is the biggest playmaker on our team, or at least he should be. And no, I'm not talking about Jameis Winston. I'm talking about a guy who's been around our team for a while. This guy has been to the Pro Bowl just about every year he's been in the league, maybe every year. I'm not entirely sure. I'm talking about Gerald McCoy. Oh, G-Mac. And here's what we need to see from Gerald McCoy this year. This is kind of the next step that I think he needs to take. This is the thing that I think has been holding him back. That this is the year, if we're going to be a culture of winning, if we're going to be serious about that, this is what we need to see from him this year. Gerald McCoy needs to get to double-digit sacks this year. That's what we're looking from him. He's never been there. He's come close a few times. He's had 8.5 sacks the last 2 years. He had 9 sacks the year before that, but he's never been able to get over that hump, that double-digit sack hump. And it's time to break that. It's time to get double-digit sacks. Now, granted, if you sit back and you look at the past couple of years, part of the reason why he's not had double-digit sacks is because he has been the dominant force on the defensive line, and other teams game plan for that. So they're double teaming G-Mac all the time. And when he gets double teamed, injuries happen. And so he's had to sit out a few games. But this year, guys, the rest of the D-line is actually looking pretty solid. Will Golson is in there. We've got Noah Spence who's come in. We've got some other guys who've really come in. And these guys should be enough of a force themselves that teams aren't going to just be able to double team Gerald McCoy the entire season. So give him a little relief, actually give him a legit shot at hitting double-digit sacks. The fact that Gerald McCoy has been able to get this close to 10 sacks, being double teamed as much as he is, and being really the target on the defensive line, man, if that can loosen up just a little bit, he should be able to go crazy. And I think that's what we need to see from G-Mac this year. This has got to be the year he gets to double-digit sacks. All right, playmaker number 2 that we're moving on to that we need to see from, I'm talking about a guy over on the offensive side of the ball. You know what? I tell you what, let's move down to another one. Let's move down. I'm going to bring this guy up, actually. This was my number 4 guy. I'm going to bring him up to number 2. There's no real ranking here, so I'm going to talk about him. We talked about Gerald McCoy on the defense. Let's talk about Jameis Winston over on the offense. What do we need to see from Jameis Winston in year 2? I don't know. I found it a little hard to kind of pick something for him because he certainly is a playmaker. You guys remember that Atlanta game? I think I've referenced this particular play once before on this podcast where he just kept going. He just kept making it happen. That's Jameis Winston. So, and he was a rookie. He had phenomenal enough of a rookie year that he wound up going to the Pro Bowl. Now, granted, he was kind of an alternate to an alternate, and a bunch of people said no, and it just moved him up. But still, he made it to the Pro Bowl his rookie freaking year. That's amazing. So what is it that we need to see from Jameis Winston, the face of the franchise, our franchise quarterback, coming up here that he needs to do better in his second year? Well, I think it's this. Just real simple. This is probably a nitpicky thing on him, but he needs to protect the ball more. That's what we got to see from Jameis Winston this year. I need him to keep doing everything else he's doing. Keep making the run plays, keep making the splash plays, keep putting the ball in your receivers' hands, keep reading your defenses, keep doing all of that, but protect the ball more. You guys remember Jameis Winston's very first pass in the NFL? It was a pick 6. Pick 6. God, that's got to suck. That's got to suck for a guy like Jameis too. It really does. But hey, listen, Jameis Winston only had 15 interceptions his entire rookie campaign. And in the middle of that campaign, he had a run of 4 games in a row with 0 interceptions. That's a phenomenal year. But he still had those interceptions. He still just needs to protect the ball. He needs to make a better decision. And I've heard Dirk Cutter talking about that in some of his press conferences here in OTAs, as he's saying Jameis is making better decisions about when to just eat the football, just to fall on it and protect it when the pocket collapses, or how to get out. He just has to protect that football a bit better. And I think that's the thing I need to see really coming out of Jameis Winston. That's the thing that keep doing everything else he's doing. All right. You can't nail him down to just one thing, but if I had to pick out one thing, this is what I need him to see. Just the fundamentals of football. He's got to protect the ball better. All right. Talking about Jameis Winston, we're going to keep it on the offensive side of the ball. And we're going to move over to really a guy who is just a star receiver, Mike Evans. And just mentioning that name, we're going to talk about Mike Evans, and just mentioning his name, you guys already know what I'm going to say. Here's what we need to see from Mike Evans this year. Just fundamental of fundamentals for a receiver, as he needs to catch the damn ball. All right, that's what Mike Evans needs to do. He's got to catch the danged ball. And you know who knows this better than anyone else? Is Mike Evans himself. He does. He knows it better. Now listen, it's one thing when a player is having a problem and he knows it and he's working on it. And he's working on it with his coaches. It's another thing altogether when the problem is so glaring that you and I know it as well. That's when something has really become a problem. And guys, let's face facts. Mike Evans is an amazing receiver. Listen, there's a reason Mike Evans was the first round pick in 2014. He's a great receiver. He had a great rookie year. Last year was not really even a bad year. You know, a lot of people were giving Mike Evans a lot of crap for last year, but it really wasn't a sophomore slump. I mean, not really, mostly on everything. I mean, look at it. 2014, he had his first year, his rookie year, he had 68 receptions. 2015, he had 74. In 2014, his rookie year, he had 1,051 receiving yards. Last year, in the midst of all those drops, he still had 1,206 yards. Went up by almost 155 yards. More yards, and he still had all those drops. His average yards per reception his rookie year was 15.5. Last year was 16.3. That's not a sophomore slump, people. But as you guys may recall, stats can lie. And I talked about that the other day, or the other episode, didn't I? Your stats can lie. You may look at those numbers and go, hey, there's no problem there. Mike Evans, fantastic receiver. He's doing fine. Let's just keep doing what he's doing. Let's look at the Giants game last year. All right, let's look at that. He had 8 receptions and 152 yards. It's not a bad game for any receiver at all. But in that same game, he also had 6 drops. And in the process, he got the record for the most drops in a single game by a single player in 10 years. And by the way, the Bucs got trounced in that game. What did we lose? 38-14, something like that. It was not a pretty game at all. I guess those numbers look really good on Mike Evans, but we didn't really talk about the only stat that actually matters at the end of the day. In 2014, Mike Evans had 12 touchdowns. In 2015, he had 3. He went up in number of receptions. He went up in number of yards. He went up in his average yards per reception. But yet his touchdown number was cut by 3/4. Went from 12 to 3. Listen, guys, yards don't win games. Receptions don't win games. Only points win games. Only points win games. Now, listen, I don't have the numbers on it, but it sure seems to me like a lot of those passes he dropped last year, just kind of thinking back on it, really were passes that had he caught them, he could have turned them into points. He really could have. And so, listen, guys, here at the end of the day, I want you to hear me straight. Mike Evans is a playmaker. We all know he is. I think that's why we're so hard on him as a fan base. That's because when he drops a ball, it blows our mind. We're like, dude, you are better than this. Maybe we wouldn't worry about it so much if it was from another, if it was Adam Humphries or Dante Dye and nothing against those guys. But Mike Evans is our playmaker. He's the big guy. He's one of the Duncaneers, And what we need to see from him is he needs to catch the dang ball. because when he does that, when he doesn't have all those drops, when he gets outside of his head, those receptions can turn into points. And when we put points on the board, we win games. And we develop a culture of winning. So that's Mike Evans. All right, let's move on. Someone else. Should we go over to the defensive side? Yeah, let's go over to the defensive side. Let's talk about Gerald McCoy's favorite partner in crime, Mr. Lavonte David. Big nod to Lavonte David making his first Pro Bowl appearance this past year, and here's to many, many more. But here's what we need to see from Lavonte David, at least what I think I need to see from Lavonte. Lavonte's great. He's a phenomenal player. Here's what I need. I need him to be nasty from the beginning of the season. I do. I need him to be mean. I need him to be Lavonte David from the very beginning. And here's what I'm talking about. You guys remember last year, Quan Alexander came in as a rookie. He started at Mike linebacker, and Lavonte, from his own admission, he was just too concerned about Quan Alexander. He was watching what Quan was doing so much that Lavonte was missing his own guys. He wasn't playing up to his thing. And it was about week 4, I think it was, when Lavonte could kind of chill out, just let Quan do his own thing. And Lavonte started focusing on the people he needed to focus on, and he got nasty. And guys, this year we need to flip that on its head, and we need Lavonte to get nasty out the gate. Lavonte, just from game 1, he needs to go out there and just be Lavonte David. That's what we need to see from Lavonte. Just focus on you, Lavonte. That's all we need you to do, bro. All right, moving on. Why don't we jump back over to the offensive side of the ball? We had Jameis, we had Mike Evans, and of course, how do we talk about the playmakers on the offensive side of the ball without talking about our $35 million running back, Mr. Doug Martin, the Dugginator, Dougie Fresh, whatever we want to call him. Doug, here's what we need you to do, bro. I need you to stop fumbling the ball. Now, I went back and I looked it up, and turns out Doug Martin last year dropped the ball 5 times. Fumbled the ball. I'm not talking about receptions where he dropped the ball. I'm talking about he had the ball in his arms. He was running. Somebody came in, put a helmet on it, popped it out of his hands. 5 times. I don't know about you guys, but I was shocked by that number because it sure seemed like more than that to me. Now, here's Doug Martin. Here's a guy kind of like Mike Evans, had a phenomenal year. Okay, I'm not trying to downplay their years. He had a great year last year. That's why he got $35 million picked up on his contract to come back in. And a great year, second most rushing yards in the NFL. Awesome. Maybe he could have had more if he'd held on to the ball. 5 doesn't seem like it's that many fumbles to me. But then consider this. Prior to last year, his first 3 years in the league, he dropped the ball a combined total of 3 times. And then he did 5 in one season. Now, you can explain some of that, and he actually just got more carries. You know, he certainly got a crap ton more carries last year than he did in any season before. You have more carries, you're likely to have more fumbles. Kind of the same thing with Jameis. You get more throwing yards, or you get more passes, you're going to throw more interceptions. It's just the nature of the game. But for Doug, what we really need is he's got to just hang on to the ball. All right. And it's been such an issue. They are aware of it, that Tim Spencer, the running backs coach of the Bucs, said of his fumbling problem, in quotes, he said, "We've talked about it and we've studied it. So they know what the problem is and they know what the issue is, and they've just got to work on them." So I'm glad to hear that. I'm glad to know that they know what the issue is. I'm glad to know that they know what the problem is and that they've got a plan and they're working on it. At least that's what I hope they're doing. All right, well, I've got one more playmaker I want to talk about before getting out of here. We're going to jump back over to the defensive side of the ball. So on offense, we talked about Jameis. We talked about Mike Evans. We talked about Doug Martin. On the defensive side of the ball, we talked about Gerald McCoy, Lavonte David, and, of course, I've got to go with the final guy of Quan Alexander. Now, here's a guy who had a great rookie year. In fact, he had such a great rookie year, he impressed so much that he became the Mike linebacker. He became basically the quarterback of the defense his rookie year. And that's on top of when Lovey had brought in a couple of guys, a couple of veterans that were familiar with his system, quotes, and Quan came in and beat him out for that job, beat him out for that position. And here's what we need to see from Quan Alexander this year. Here's the big thing I'm expecting from him. I need him to play 16 games. We need Quan to play all 16 games. Listen, when Quan was there, we went 6-6. When Quan was there, we were slanting up and to the right. The team was on an upward trajectory last year. All right, let's take a look at it. Our record in the first quarter of the season, we went 1-3. All right, let's admit that's not awesome. Okay, it's not great at all. We went 1-3. But in the second quarter of the season, the next 4 games, we went 2-2. In the third quarter of the season, the next 4 games after that, we went 3-1. Now, think of how poetic that would have been. And people were expecting the Bucks to run the table on the last 4 weeks of the in the last quarter of the season, in those last 4 games, and we should have gone 4-0. Think how that's a great trajectory for a team. You start off 1-3, and then you go 2-2, and you go 3-1, and you wind up 4-0 on the quarters of the season. That's nobody wants to start 1-3, but if you're going to, that's how you want to end the season. But what happened was Quan, as I'm sure you guys are all aware, got suspended the last 4 games, and instead of going 4-0, we wound up going 0-4. Now listen, I'm not putting all that on Quan. I'm not laying that on his shoulders whatsoever. Not at all. But I will say this, we need Quan. We are a better team when Quan is on the field. He has the heart, he has the passion, he has the determination to win. He's not unlike Jameis in those aspects at all. And that's why he is so valuable to be on the team and on the field with the team as we need him. You guys remember last year when his little brother died? Quan, by all rights, should have, and he would have been very much excused from the game to go deal with that. But instead, he showed up. He showed up mostly as a way to honor. He could honor his brother more by showing up and playing. And he played the best game of his entire rookie season. There was something that was different in Quan after that moment, after playing that game, than he had previous to that up to that point of his rookie year. And the defense was different after that. There's something that happens when you have a guy like that who is a playmaker, who shows up, who is just there, who's on the field as a playmaker. And there's the thing. He's a playmaker. We need our playmakers all of the time. So, Quan, we need you there 16 games, pal. That's really what we're looking for. All right, guys, I think that's going to get our main segment. So let's just recap that. Gerald McCoy, what we're looking for from him is we're looking to get double-digit sacks this year. Finally to break that 10 mark. Now, he can go on and get 12, 13, 14, 15. That'd be awesome. Nobody's going to complain about that. But that's what I'm looking for from him this year. From Jameis Winston, I need him to protect the ball a little bit more. From Mike Evans, I need him to catch the damn ball. From Levante David, he's got to be nasty from the beginning. And this year, I don't think he's going to worry about Quan one little bit. I really don't. Doug Martin, I need you to stop dropping the ball. Keep doing what you're doing, son. Stop dropping the ball. And Quan Alexander, man, we need you all 16 games, bro. We need you all 16 games. All right, guys, well, that's going to wrap up this segment. Hey, listen, I would love to know your thoughts on my thoughts, especially as it relates to your expectations of the team, your expectations of the playmakers this year. What are the things that they need to change? What are did I miss maybe a playmaker that you thought I should have included in this list? Well, listen, guys, you can let me know. You can hit me up on Facebook at facebook.com/thepewtercast, or you can send me a tweet over to @thepewtercast, or drop me a line at thepewtercast@gmail.com. I do respond to just about every single piece of communication we get, and if it's good, we'll probably read it on air. All right, guys, well, up next, we're talking about, kind of keeping in line with this subject, we're going to be talking about our top 5 playmakers in Buccaneers history. As I rank them, let's see how they rank up against yours. That's coming up next on the Pewtercast. Guys, welcome back to the Pewtercast. This is episode 4, getting back to the fundamentals. And wow, that was a great discussion, I think, that we just had on what do we need to see from our playmakers coming into this year that really helps solidify what all that changing of the culture is going to be. We need those bricks to be the bricks, to be the cornerstones. What are some of the things we need to see? So I thought, coming off of that discussion, we could really stop and take a look at how would I rank? I began thinking about that. How would I rank my top 5 Bucks playmakers from history. So that's what we're going into. This is really a subjective article. So if you have a different thought, man, I'd love to hear from it. You can send it into me, Twitter, Facebook, send it to me on email. Would love to hear what your thoughts are. But guys, my criteria for selecting these is going to be this. One, as usual, I had to see them play. So unfortunately I couldn't take anybody really before 1997, I guess, really 98, somewhere around there. I had to see them play, or I had to see clips of them. I guess I could take somebody from before that if I just saw their clips, but nobody on this list is from that. So the other thing too was I took off anyone who is currently on the team. All right. I think there might be some players on the team now that might actually replace some of these guys, possibly. Maybe, definitely will get honorable mentions. I'm not sure, but just for sake of ease, I really just took them off, out of consideration for this. So, we'll be talking about that. The other thing too, is I'll say, man, this one, shaped up. I put the list down. The 5 people that I have on my list have not changed. They're actually the same people, but I really struggled with putting them in what I considered the right order. So, and some of it was a little bit surprising to me. So, so let's dive into it. Guys, coming in at number 5, my number 5 top playmaker in Tampa Bay Buccaneers history. He is going into the Tampa Bay Buccaneers Ring of Honor this year, and I'm talking about Mr. John Lynch. All right, now John is a guy who played for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers from 1993 to 2003. That's a 10-year run, actually probably close to an 11-year run by the time you figure out how the years on that actually work out. Phenomenal player. When he goes into the Hall of Fame, he will be in as a Buccaneer, which is awesome. I love that for him. I love having him there. But guys, I mean, just some of his career highlights. Let's look at who we're talking about. We're talking about a 9-time Pro Bowler. 3 times he was the first team All-Pro. He was 1 time a second team All-Pro. He, of course, was part of the Super Bowl champion. In fact, I'll go ahead and say all of the guys that I'm talking about today were part of the Super Bowl winning team. He won the NFL Alumni Defensive Back of the Year. He got the Brett Starr Man of the Year award. He got the Whizzer White NFL Man of the Year award. He got the Junior So Foundation Legend of the Year award. Man, this guy he racked up. He had, over the course of his career, he had 1,058 tackles. That wasn't just with the Bucs. That was also with the Broncos as well. He had 13 sacks on a quarterback, which, keep in mind, he was a safety. All right. The guy's a safety, got to the quarterback 13 times. He had 26 interceptions, forced 16 fumbles. Man, this guy was a player. This guy was a hard-hitting player. And you hear people talking about him all the time, that John Lynch could not play in today's NFL. He retired from the NFL in 2008. He didn't actually play that particular season. He was just an off-season or practice squad member. So really, the last time we truly saw him in action was in 2007 with the Denver Broncos. And here we are now. What are we, 10 years later, 10 years later, and the NFL has changed. The rules have changed so much that John Lynch couldn't do it. He was really known for being just that hard-hitting, just beast of a player. I mean, you could hear the crunch. They didn't even have microphones pointed at the field. You could just hear the crunch come over other microphones in the stadium that they would have come through the TV. He was a hard-hitting player, and that's why he makes my list as one of the top 5 playmakers in Tampa Bay Buccaneers history. All right, number 4 on my list. This one's one of those that surprised me on the placing of him. And number 4 coming in is one of my favorite guys to talk about, honestly, is the great Warren Sapp. Let's take a look at some of his stats. He played with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers from 1995 to 2003. He was jettisoned by Johnny Gruden. I don't understand why, never understood why, but he wound up playing with the Oakland Raiders, the team that we just put the smackdown on like 2 months earlier in the Super Bowl, and he was with them for a few years. But he was a 7-time Pro Bowl player, 4 times he was on the first team All-Pro team. 2 times he was on the second team All-Pro team. He was the NFL Defensive Player of the Year in 1999. He made the 1990s All-Decade team, the 2000s All-Decade team. He's had his number retired. He is in the Tampa Bay Ring of Honor. He is an inductee into the Pro Football Hall of Fame, and he's got tons of college awards and honors. He started 188 of his 198 games possible. That's amazing. Had 573 tackles, 96 and a half sacks. Come on, G-Mac. We want you up there. We're rooting for you, bro. We are rooting for you. 96 and a half sacks. Forced 19 fumbles. He had 4 interceptions, and my man Warren Sapp, 3 touchdowns. Now, you got to believe, you got a man who is forcing 19 fumbles. He himself, as a defensive lineman, is intercepting the ball 4 times. Usually that's something reserved for the guys in the backfield. He intercepted the ball 4 times, and he scored 3 times as a defensive lineman. This guy was amazing to watch. He was phenomenal to watch. We loved watching him, and he can be a controversial guy. Some of his off the field stuff, I don't mind it that much. I really don't. I thought it's just a part of the attitude that he has, but he gets my vote for number 4 playmaker in Buccaneers history, with the caveat that he really probably could be a little bit higher. And I don't know. I'd love to hear from you guys what you think. All right. Coming in at number 3 on my list, as top 5 playmakers in Tampa Bay Buccaneers history, we're going to stay on the defensive side of the ball, and I am talking about Mr. Rondé Barber, number 20, cornerback. Here's a guy. He played with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers from 1997 to 2012, played his entire career in Tampa Bay. He was part of the Super Bowl championship team, 5-time Pro Bowl attendee, 3-time first team All-Pro team, 2-time second team All-Pro team, NFC champion. He was in the 2000s All-Decade team. He got the Ed Block Courage Award. He has the most consecutive starts, holds this as a record by an NFL cornerback. He has the most quarterback sacks by an NFL quarterback. He has the Buccaneers career interceptions reward. He is the NFL interception leader as of 2001, and he was the touchdown leader in the NFL, taking interceptions and turning them into touchdowns in 2006. Here's a man who had 1,231 tackles, sacked the quarterback 28 times, deflected 166 passes, intercepted the ball 47 times, forced 15 fumbles, and scored 12 touchdowns. Put him in the bank. Rondé Barber, one of the best, most historic playmakers in Tampa Bay Buccaneers history, makes my list at number 3. All right, number two, we are keeping on the defensive side of the ball, and this guy should come as no surprise, though maybe his position might be, but it's just where I'm going to put him. I'm calling out really the spirit, the soul, maybe the heart. No, I'm going to call him the soul of the historic defensive Buccaneers team. I'm talking about Mr. Derrick Brooks. Now, Derrick Brooks was a guy, let's take a look at his stuff. He played with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers 1995 to 2008, and like Rondé Barber, played his entire career with Tampa Bay. He did not move on to another team. When he was done in Tampa, he said, I'm done for life. He did go on, and he was an executive with the Tampa Bay Storm. Actually, still is. He's a co-owner. He's the president with them over there. But some of his career highlights: he was an 11-time Pro Bowler. He was a 9-time All-Pro team. Of course, he was part of that Super Bowl championship team win. He was the Walter Payton Man of the Year in 2000. He was the Walter Payton Man of the Year winner in 2000. He was the NFL Defensive Player of the Year in 2002. He was also the NFL Alumni Linebacker of the Year that same year in 2002. He also, like John Lynch, won the Whizzer White NFL Man of the Year award. He was a Pro Bowl MVP of 2005. He was voted to the NFL 2000s All-Decade team. He is part of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers Ring of Honor. He has also had his number retired. He has had his number retired in his college over at the Florida State Seminoles, And he had 1,715 tackles over the course of his career. He had 13 and a half quarterback sacks. That number seems low to me, but still amazing. He had 25 interceptions. He forced 24 fumbles, and he had 7 touchdowns. All bringing Mr. Derrick Brooks to my number 2 spot. Now, if you compare some of those numbers, you might look at Rondé Barber being a little bit, being better. But hey, listen, this is a very subjective list. When I thought back to it, here's what I remembered. I remembered seeing Derrick Brooks make more plays. He was a bigger playmaker, and helping things happen around the field. Being a playmaker isn't just getting the numbers yourself. It's helping other people get those numbers. And I don't know if Rondé Barber or even Warren Sapp or John Lynch would have been as good as they were without Derrick Brooks. I dare say they wouldn't have been. And that's why Derrick Brooks makes my number 2 spot as one of the top playmakers in Tampa Bay Buccaneers history. All right, guys, so here we are. We are at the big number 1 spot. Who do you think I got? I'll go ahead and tell you. I've got him over on the offensive side of the ball. All my other guys were defensive guys. This guy is on the offensive side of the ball. This is a guy who he just made stuff happen. Like, it was unbelievable watching this guy play. It was unbelievable. Things would just come out of nowhere with this guy. Oh my gosh. Before I get to it, let's see if you can figure it out. This guy, obviously part of the Super Bowl championship team. He was with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers his entire career from 1996 to 2007. 6 times he went to the Pro Bowl. 3 times he was named to the first team All-Pro team. And then once he was named to the second team All-Pro team. He is part of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers Ring of Honor. He is in the Purdue Intercollegiate Athletic Hall of Fame. He is in the Indiana Football Hall of Fame. He was a rusher. He had 1,359 rushing attempts, and out of that, he garnered 5,088 rushing yards, averaging 3.7 yards per carry, and had 58 rushing touchdowns. People give it up. I'm talking about the man himself, the A-Train. People give it up for my number 1 pick for the playmaker in Buccaneers history, Mike Alstott.
Second down goal. Handoff Alstott. Up they get Mike Alstott. Touchdown, Tampa Bay. Bucs are on the board again.
Yeah, guys, Mike was really one of those. Him and Warren Sapp were the 2 that I think moved around the most. Rondé Barber moved around a little bit for me. These were my 5 guys. Lynch, Sapp, Barber, Brooks, and Alstott were always the 5 I had on this list. I just really struggled. And here's why, to me, Mike Alstott winds up at the top of this list. Because when you talk about a playmaker, something that is innate in that idea is somebody who can take nothing and turn it into something. It's a lot of what we saw from Doug Martin this last year. He took what was really nothing and somehow shook off a tackle, who broke a tackle he got through, and he turned it into a play. And that is a playmaker. And we all loved watching the A-Train. He had his own theme music. He had his own sound. He had his own sound effect, his own cue for the A-Train. And man, this was the guy that if you just wanted to watch on the field what was going to happen, you watched this guy. Every time he got the ball, you just paid attention a little bit more than you did anyone else. And if he wasn't on the field, we were always scratching our head going, why ain't he on the field? You remember those pads he had, the ones that came like way up high on his neck that was awesome to watch? Oh yeah, man. I love Mike Alstott. Guys, I know you do too. So, guys, that's my list. Number 5, John Lynch. Number 4, Warren Sapp. Number 3, Rondé Barber. Number 2, Derrick Brooks. And number 1, Mike Alstott. All right, so there you go. Guys, I've got I've got a couple honorable mentions, the people that didn't quite make my list. Warrick Dunn certainly was in there. Simeon Rice, who is our current, our sack leader right now, right? He was the last person to get double-digit sacks. Gerald McCoy, get after it, boy. Yeah, you guys remember Joe Juravicious? Now, there's a guy I liked a lot. I know he was only here for a couple of years, and he bounced around to some different teams, but man, I loved watching that guy play. You remember watching him in the Super Bowl? I liked him a lot. Of course, you can't get off of this list without talking about the great late Leroy Selman. Oh my gosh, that's just he's an icon in Tampa Bay Buccaneers history. So those are a couple of my honorable mentions. Of course, there's a ton of other people that we could that we could mention, particularly from those, late 90s, early 2000s years, just that would be honorable mentions as a top 5 playmaker. But those were some of the guys that I also considered. So, all right, guys. Well, before we move on from this segment, we had a poll that we put out these last couple of weeks, and the poll was simply this: who did you think was the biggest playmaker in Tampa Bay Buccaneers history who was not currently on the roster? And your choices were Warren Sapp, Derek Brooks, put Leroy Selmon on there, and Rondé Barber. And out of all the results, coming in at number 1 with 50% of the vote was Mr. Derek Brooks. So, guys, there you go. Derek Brooks coming in on the fan poll of the top playmaker in Tampa Bay Buccaneer history. In case you were wondering, Warren Sapp came in second at 38%. Rondé Barber came in at 12%. Leroy Selmon, unfortunately, got none of the vote, but I can understand that because I'm sure some of the people that were around to watch Leroy Selmon are not on Twitter. All right, guys. Well, that's going to do it for this particular segment. I would really love to know how your list stacks up against mine. How do your top 5 picks, what order even do you put them in? Well, guys, you can let me know by shooting me an email at thepewtercast@gmail.com or connect with me on social media. The name is The Pewtercast on both Facebook and Twitter. We do respond to all communications, so please come on and talk to me. Would love to have that conversation with you. All right, guys. Well, up next, we've got a brand new segment to close out the show called Fan to Fan. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. Hey guys, this is your host Brent Allen here. I wanted to take just a second and let you guys in on a little something. You guys may or may not have recalled me saying that when I'm not doing this podcast, I am actually a working stand-up comedian, which has been a lot of fun. If you're in the South Carolina area at all, in the Greenville area, you will find me every Thursday night at the Greenville Comedy Zone. And other than that, I am out traveling around. So hey, listen, if you want to check me out, head over to my website. It's brentallenlive.com. You can check out some clips and some videos. And if you're interested in bringing me in, guys, I am a clean comic. And I do clubs, of course, but also we do a lot of corporate events. I do a lot of corporate events. We do church shows. We do done birthday parties. So guys, I just wanted to draw your attention over to that real quick. Head over there, check it out. Would love to connect with you if you're interested in maybe bringing me down. Would love to come down to Tampa, maybe even catch a game with you while I'm down there. Or I'll travel to wherever you are, because I know we have Bucks fans really all over the place. So my contact information is on there if you're interested in anything going on. Just thought I'd use this platform. And hey, listen, if you happen to have a business or you would like to support the podcast or you would like to just get in front of Tampa Bay Buccaneers fans, would you shoot me an email at thepewtercast@gmail.com. Would love to talk with you about some sponsorship opportunities that could go really well right here in this spot or maybe even another spot. It's not really very expensive at all, so would love to talk with you about that, about how you can support the podcast and get in front of some Buccaneers fans at the same time. Welcome, Bucks fans, back to our final segment of episode number 4, getting back to the fundamentals in a brand new segment that I like to call Fan to Fan. And guys, here's really what's going to happen in this segment. I'm just going to kind of sit back and I'm going to talk to you as a fan to you, who is also a fan to fan. You get it? And we're just going to kind of spitball some of the stuff that we see happening out there. And guys, I think the first thing I'm going to jump onto is this is, here's the deal. I don't mean to be Johnny Sunshine when it comes to all of this. I really like to think of myself as a realist, kind of like somebody who's like Fox News. I'm fair and balanced, but I have a definite slant, you know what I'm saying? When things aren't going well, I do like to call it out. I'm certainly slanted towards the Buccaneers, and I'm going to be slanted towards sending out positive thoughts towards them. But if it's not going well, we're going to talk about it. Now, that said, one of the things that I have started hearing out of many of the other Bucks podcasts, I heard it over at Off the Edge, I've heard it over at What the Buck, I even heard Scott Smith talking about it over at Buccaneers.com on the Buccaneers Insiders Live, the podcast that I was listening to on there. And it's all of us are talking about the positivity that we're feeling going into this season. and how strange it kind of feels. I mean, we're always hopeful as fans. We always, this time of year is exciting. There's reason to hope, honestly. And we like to send out, the vibes, good vibes out there to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. But guys, this year just feels different. This year, it just really feels, can I say genuine? It's we are looking up. There's some good things that are happening out there in Buccaneers land, and we're super excited about it. So I don't know. We'll see what happens. Hopefully this really gets to continue through the season. And, we as fans are just, I'm super excited. And I've kind of got to call out the idea that we're just feeling a little too happy almost, because of how exciting things are. And man, it's great to be feeling this, it's great to be feeling this. So, gosh, what else is going out there? I saw this come across the wire in a couple things. This isn't really bucking the news, although it could kind of stand in for that segment, but this is more of just a headline. Is I've seen several people talking about Cameron Brate beating out Austin Seferian-Jenkins and actually becoming our number one tight end, which, we've got a pretty deep tight end bench. We've got Luke Stalker, we've got Cam Brate, we've got ASJ for sure. I feel like I'm missing somebody. Danny Vitale, who's sliding in as a tight end. That's a pretty good tight end room. It's a pretty good core of tight ends right there. But a lot of people are saying how Cameron Brate, this guy who's he was a practice squad player for a little bit last year, bounced back and forth between us and the Saints, and then he came back and got his way onto the team, and now he is really emerging as our deep red zone threat, and that he's going to come out and be our number one thing. So what do we think about that? Well, guys, here's what I think. This is my honest to God opinion. And like I said, you guys go back, listen to the ASJ situations parts 1 and 2. We'll talk about him and what he means. I'm not saying he should be kicked off the team. Not at all. Go back and listen to it, see what I say. But here's what I say. If Cameron Brate legitimately beats out ASJ, then there's no hard feelings. Cameron Brate should be our number one tight end. We love the story of a guy who comes in kind of as an undrafted free agent. I don't know if that's what he was or not, but a guy who was on a practice squad and earns a roster spot, maybe through even, God forbid, an injury. And I think that's how he ultimately got on the team. And we kind of liked him, and he got out there and he worked and he worked and he worked, and he became literally the number one tight end in a room full of really good tight ends. Man, that's awesome. Good on Cameron Brate, and that kind of competition is only going to raise the level of all the other tight ends coming out of there. So I don't know. I think that's cool. I think that's awesome. And for his sake, I hope he does. And for ASJ's sake, I hope that there's a lot of competition in that room. I hope we just have a great stable of tight ends here in Tampa Bay. So there's that. Hey, something else, fans, that I've been seeing, and have you guys noticed it? I referenced this in episode 1, talking about the review of the draft, where I said that it kind of feels like things are starting to shape up where we have analogs of this team to that old team that won the Super Bowl. With Danny Vitale coming in, kind of looking a lot like Mike Allstott. We got Noah Spence coming in looking like he's, kind of that defensive line guy that we used to have. We've got Vernon Hargreaves coming in looking a lot like Rondé Barber. Even Roberto Aguayo coming in. It looks like things are starting to finally fall into place. We had Levante David really coming in as that Derek Brooks type figure. So, and here's what I've noticed this last week. I think this is really cool. The analogs are talking. Like, apparently I'm not the only one who has noticed this, because they're starting to talk. Like, there have been pictures of Mike Allstott talking with Danny Vitale. Martin Gramatica came in. You guys remember him? Martin came in, and he's been having big talks with Roberto Aguayo. Rondé Barber's been in talking with Vernon Hargreaves. I mean, I think that's really cool. I love the idea that the Bucs of yesteryear are talking to and encouraging the Bucs today. That's just really cool. I love seeing that, and I can't wait to see what that means, potentially for this team coming down. As Levante said, we might be the best team in the history of the NFL, and that'd be something. I know a lot of people are kind of writing that off, but man, they could be. Who knows? I don't know. Probably not, but maybe they will be. Maybe I'm not going to doubt them. I think they have every opportunity and every I think they have all the potential in the world to be one of the, if not the greatest defenses of all time. I just do. That'd be really cool, especially as the years go on. So I got a little bit of a complaint, though. You know what? I've not really heard a lot about some of our other draft picks. We've heard a lot about Vernon and Noah and Roberto, and even a lot out of Danny Vitale, who was our final pick in the draft. But what about those other three guys? I'd like to hear something a little bit more about those. I'd like to see some interviews with those guys. I'd like to know Ryan Smith, who was brought in as a linebacker or cornerback, I think it was, but Jason Light said they were going to kind of move him over to safety. I've just not heard much about him. I wonder what's going on with him. Caleb Beninock, which I know he was out for most of OTAs because of some silly rule with classes still happening at his college, so he couldn't participate in the NFL until those classes were done. But I'd love to know what's going on with him. And probably the guy I've heard the least from is Devontae Bond. Is he even out there? I don't know. What's going on with him? I don't know. I'd love to catch up with those guys and kind of see how they're doing. Maybe that's another episode topic is we'll go in and we'll do kind of a draft midsummer's review and see how each one of them are doing. So that's where we are. I don't know. We're now in the middle of the waiting game. OTAs are done. Minicamp doesn't start for a couple weeks, so we got time, right? I mean, we got tons of time. So I don't know. But that's what I think about that. I'd really kind of like to hear about those guys. So yeah, that's it. All right, Bucs fans. I think that's actually going to wrap it up, not just for this segment, but for this episode of the Pewtercast. Guys, one more time, just as always, you can connect with me via email at thepewtercast@gmail.com. You can connect with me on Facebook.com at thepewtercast or on Twitter at thepewtercast as well. Or guys, I talked about it, please, at the beginning of the show, we talked about subscribing on iTunes and leaving us a review. Just as a reminder, if we hit 25 by the start of the preseason, we'll add an instant take show for the season. So that should be super fun. We're like 20 away or so. So guys, we can do it. Let's get there. All right, guys. Well, hey, listen, as we close out the show, talking about the fundamentals, talking about the playmakers, it really reminds me of something that I just want to encourage you guys all out there to be as we kind of think about this. You be the playmaker in your own life. Guys, what's it mean to be a playmaker? It's just somebody who gets it done. You do whatever it takes. Listen, we all have circumstances that try to hold us down. GMAC had those, the other guys around him that he keeps getting double teamed, and those are circumstances. And here's the truth, guys. You don't have to be a victim to your circumstances. That's up to you. Being a playmaker means you find a way to win. You just make it happen. So guys, I want to encourage you. Be the playmaker in your life. Find a way to make it happen. And you'll be amazed at the things that you guys get done. Guys, I'm Brent Allen for the Pewtercast. Thanks so much for joining me. I'll catch you guys on the next episode, episode 5. And until then, go Bucs.